Joining me on the line now is Dr. Dvir Abramovich, Chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission. Dvir, good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.
Now, you have penned a letter to the editor of The Age expressing disappointment in this cartoon. What do you want in response?
Well, first I'll say that when I saw it, I felt like I was kicked in the stomach. I felt sickened, outraged. It's the kind of reaction where you know something instantly is not just wrong, it's dangerous. And I have to say, echoing what you said before, what made it worse was realizing this wasn't some fringe site. This wasn't a troll or radical pamphlet. This was The Age. This was the Sydney Morning Herald, mainstream, powerful, papers that shaped the national mood, institutions that should know better. And I couldn't believe it made it through the editorial process. I kept asking myself, how did it not set off alarm bells? Did nobody stop and say, hold on, this crosses a line, this is obscene? Because this is how ugly, dangerous, anti-Semitic ideas get a fresh coat of paint. They slip into polite society, and they're dressed up as clever, edgy cartoons. And this cartoon doesn't debate the Royal Commission. What it says very, very clearly, as you said, don't believe all these eminent Australians, all these lawyers and business leaders and sports stars. They're not thinking. They're being directed. They're marching to someone else's orders. And of course, the order is Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. And criticism is one thing, but the Jews control his storyline is another one. Because, as you said, it takes a national tragedy, the murder of 15 people on Bondi, and turns Jews into puppet masters. And it reaches for the oldest anti-Semitic blood libel there is, the idea that Jews don't just have opinions, they have control. They're behind the scenes, they're pulling the strings, they're always the hidden hand. And this is not harmless. In an atmosphere where anti-Semitism is already surging, where Jews are being harassed, threatened, attacked, and now murdered, this is the last thing we needed. The last thing we needed.
Dvir, I think a lot of people, and obviously within the Jewish community because of the anti-Semitic stereotypes that are represented in this cartoon, but I think a lot of people would find it quite insulting that Australians can't make up decisions for themselves as well. We believe, so many Aussies, as we've heard in letters to the Prime Minister, we believe this needs a royal commission because, A, we don't want to see anti-Semitism in our community. We want to get to the crux of how our worst ever terrorist attack atrocity was committed in Australia. So many people want answers. And I think that is why also, not just the anti-Semitism related to the cartoon, but just this complete disregard for relating to the worst terrorist attack in our country, that why are we mocking an investigation into it?
Exactly. And that matters. Indigenous Olympian Nova Paris, who's really been one of the leading lights, she looked at this cartoon and she called it pathetic. And she said, we're not mindless drones. We're independent, critical thinkers who love Australia. And that's exactly it. It's not just Jews saying this feels wrong. These are Australians from different walks of life saying, don't insult us. Don't tell us we're marching on someone else's orders. And this didn't just offend Jews, it insulted Australia. And I think most Australians, reflecting on what happened in Bondi, the massacre of those 15 people, one would understand this was the killing of Australia in a way. That this crossed every line, it shattered every norm, every convention, every value that we all hold dear. And for The Age, for the Sydney Morning Herald, to go back to the anti-Semitic playbook and to say, this is not about a Royal Commission. I mean, you can criticize a Royal Commission. You can say we don't agree with it. But when you start teaching people to see Jewish influence behind every tragedy, every demand for justice, every public debate, you know what you do? You're creating a climate of hostility and suspicion. And in that climate, violence doesn't come out of nowhere. It arrives preloaded with justification. Words are bullet. Newspapers carry responsibility. And that's why I felt it necessary to write to the editor of The Age and to say, this is bigger than the publication. This is bigger than Kathy Wilcox. Someone in The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald saw this and said, yes, print it. And a newspaper is not a megaphone with no brakes. If you're The Age, you don't get to shrug and say, look, it's just a cartoon. The Age owns what it puts into the bloodstream of public debate. and they have a lot of answering. And I want a clear apology. I want the cartoon withdrawn. And I also want a serious editorial review, not just a brush off, not a non-apology, because standards aren't optional after Bondi.
Dvir, very, very quickly, and I am going to play devil's advocate just for a moment. There would be an argument from The Age, and in fairness to The Age today, they have published a number of letters condemning the cartoon as well. When it comes to opinion, as I said, if I was the editor of The Age, I don't believe I would have published it. But is there an argument for freedom of opinion in a cartoon such as this?
Well, the issue is not freedom of opinion. Kathy Wilcox is allowed to draw whatever she wants to. It's the question of whether The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald had to publish it. You know, it's like a defective product, whether it's a Coles or a Woolies. They don't have to put it on the shelf. If they find that there's a defective, dangerous, poisonous product, they remove it from the shelf. And The Age had no obligation, no responsibility. You know, 15 people were murdered. Jews were murdered. Families are shattered. People are still attending funerals. And then this image shows up and says, don't take the calls of the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community seriously. It's manipulation. It's politics. It's Netanyahu's drum. You know, I have a message to the editor of The Age. After Bondi, you don't get to treat Jewish grief like a punchline. You just don't. We are not second-class citizens. It's not open season on the Jewish community, and our blood is not cheap. They have to look into their souls and realize that they've made a very big mistake.
Dr. Dvir Abramovich, Chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, I appreciate your time this afternoon.